everyone. Today I'm offering my opinion, some may say I'm giving my advice, on various relationship issues that you have sent in to me. Before we get too far into this, I do want to explain my point of view and where my answers are coming from, because of course everyone's opinion, advice, whatever you want to say, perspective is going to be formed by certain things. So I am coming from this. I have been happily married for almost it'll be 24 years this month, together 27 with the same man. I was raised in a very traditional household. I had a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked outside the home. That is the marriage that my husband and I wanted for ourselves. So for my entire career, I've never worked outside of the house once we had kids. My husband worked outside the home, is the main breadwinner for the family. My area of focus was the children in the home. So that is going to color my view on all of my answers. I'm not saying that my way is the right way or another way is the wrong way, but obviously this is what I believe. It is sad that we've come to the point in our lives where the state of the world says I have to actually explain all this, but here we are. Okay, so I asked over on Instagram stories a couple of times and over on the YouTube community tab what sorts of questions you had for me regarding relationships. I got a lot of questions, and a lot of them overlapped a lot. So unfortunately, I can't answer all of them because we would be here for days, but I will try to do my best to answer either the ones that are a quick answer or that were the most asked over and over. These two came in at the same time from two different people, and they're very lighthearted, and we're gonna start with it. One is, till death or golf do you part? Would I ever consider? And the other is, has Michael always played golf? If so, how do I cope with being a golf widow? So I would consider taking up golf if that was something that Michael really wanted to do together, for us to play golf together. I'm sorry I'm playing with my hair. I just came from the hair salon, so it's like fresh and silky, and it keeps I'm gonna do it. So yeah, if he said, hey, I'd love it if we did this activity together, would you take lessons? Would you learn? Of course I would. I mean, I think that that's a reasonable request. And then the other question is, has Michael always played golf? Yes. The golf widow thing for me has been quite easy because Michael has always been really respectful of the family time and my time, and he's always been a very early morning kind of person. So even when the kids were little, he would leave, he would be the guy sitting outside the clubhouse before dawn waiting for the clubhouse to open. So most of the time, he would be done and home before we were really dressed and ready to go out anywhere. So it's never really been an issue, and I'll touch on the golf during the empty nester retirement phase because it's related but different. I did get a lot of questions regarding how to deal with in-laws, all kinds of variations on how to deal with a meddling mother-in-law, how to deal with in-laws that don't agree with you, that sort of thing. I've touched on this in earlier videos, but the answer is still the same. First of all, I had probably the ultimate meddling mother-in-law. She's no longer alive, so that's why she's in the past tense. So I understand the situation. I will say the key issues are these. First of all, you and your spouse have to be on the same side. You are on the same team in life. In everything that life throws at you, you need to be teammates on the same side. So if the issue is that your in-laws are difficult and your husband or spouse, whatever, is, because it could be the flip side, it could be a man asking this, I'm not even gonna go there. I'm stepping on landmines. So the bigger issue here is, are you and your spouse on the same team, sort of opposing the meddlesome or annoying in-laws? Or is your spouse taking the side of their parents, and then it's a 3-against-1 situation? Because then you have like a very deep issue in your marriage. Think of it like this way. First of all, if you really want to address it, have your husband speak to his parents. They're his parents. His input may be received better than the outsider in the family. That's number one. Number two, try to look at it like this. So like I said, I had the most meddlesome mother-in-law. My sister-in-law's friends referred to her as the Antichrist. I mean, she was a piece of work. But now that I don't know why I'm smiling, this part isn't funny. Now that she's passed away, she's been gone since my oldest was, I think, 11 years old. I would give anything to have her meddle in our lives. As much as she put her nose into our business and had an opinion on everything, she was another human in the world that loved my kids unconditionally, that I knew loved my husband unconditionally. And looking back on it now as a more mature person, probably, I don't know if she loved me unconditionally, but I know she loved me. It might not be coming out in the most positive of ways, but at least they care enough to say something. You could have the opposite problem. A set of in-laws who don't care, who aren't involved, who want nothing to do with you or your family. Sometimes when you look at a situation from a different perspective, it doesn't excuse the behavior you're dealing with, but it might make it easier for you to handle. This is, of course, assuming that your husband is on the same side as you. If he's taking a stance with his parents against you, then you have a really big problem in your marriage that goes way bigger than in-law issues, and it's time for some heavy conversations with your spouse, because a marriage cannot go on like that. It's just not healthy. I'm going to keep this PG, possibly PG-13, but if there are young children or children in the room, this might be the time to tell them to go do something else, or you pop in your headphones, because I got a lot of questions about how to keep the marriage alive, how to keep the romance alive, how to keep the spark going, blah, 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 blah. While I did end up marrying my best friend, what drew me to my husband was not his sparkling personality at first. It was seeing him across the room and going, damn, he is hot. That soon escalated into a deep emotional connection, but let's not forget where it started. And so when you start with that, even if it, I don't want to say lessens, but even if it mellows over time, you still have that at the core. If you don't have that initial physical attraction to your spouse when you're young and your bodies are the best they're ever going to look, it's harder, as we age. I don't have the body that I had when I was 21 years old and you could bounce a quarter off my rear end. And frankly, neither does my husband. I still find him incredibly attractive because we still had that physical connection from the beginning. So that's number one. Number two is you have to put some effort into it. And you also have to be realistic. There are phases of life where you're going to be able to connect physically as often as you want. And there are going to be phases in your life, especially at various points in raising children, where alone time is just not possible as often as you'd like, or even remotely close to as often as you'd like. And it's not to say that your marriage is in a bad place, it's just a moment in your marriage. I think women especially, we have this image in our head of what a relationship should look like. I really don't think men think about this stuff at all. At all. But women are always thinking about what the relationship is supposed to look like because we watch too many movies and see too many TV shows and read too many books about these perfect marriages and relationships. And we assume that our husbands have been fed this as well. They don't know what we're thinking in our head. They don't. They are not mind readers. They don't know what you want. You need to tell them. So you also sometimes have to take the initiative. So if things aren't going your way in the bedroom as often as you'd like, or in a way that you would like, you're in a healthy, committed relationship. You should feel secure in initiating what you want, speaking up and saying what you want, and not being embarrassed about it. Change it up a little bit. I don't need to go into details about how. It doesn't have to get totally crazy and kinky, but if you're mostly a nighttime person, try morning. If you're always in one room in the house, try another room when the children are not home. Things like that. Or just initiate it. Most women don't initiate. That, in and of itself, will probably add quite the spark that you're looking for. Another very popular question I got a lot of variations on was addressing empty nesting and retirement, kind of in the same thing. I'm gonna reflect this as empty nest and retirement is kind of overlapping. So you're both experiencing the empty nest, you're both at home together. That's where I'm coming from. If the situation does not apply to you, just take what you need from this, but how to deal with the empty nest thing. So I have a really unique situation in that I work from home and my husband retired at the age of 44 or 45, I can't remember which. So he has been at home with me for 5 years, I think, something like that. That was an adjustment, even though we weren't empty nesters yet. So I've lived through this. Okay, here's the thing. This applies to you whether you are married, single parent, what have you. You have to prepare for being an empty nester. If your whole life or a big portion of your life has revolved around your children, You need to plan ahead for when that's not going to happen. You need to plan ahead for when they are not there. And by that I mean, you need a hobby outside your kids. If your whole life has been about volunteering at their school and volunteering with their sports, you clearly love volunteering. Find an organization that has nothing to do with your kids so that you can keep volunteering at that organization and giving of your time forever. It's hard for women, especially in the traditional mother role, to adjust to empty nesting because you've essentially been fired from a job that you've had your entire adult life. You've had no choice in the matter. I think those of us who have an issue adjusting to being an empty nester need to have an attitude adjustment. It is not the end of a phase of life. It is not a sad thing. It is the manifestation of a job well done. Your job was to raise up these people from tiny, helpless humans into contributing members of society. And the fact that they have left your home and are relatively independent of you means you did a really good job, and you should be celebrating that. And this is the phase of life where it can be all about you. It's time to be selfish again. So as far as adjusting as just a woman to empty nesting, that is my advice. As far as adjusting to being alone with your husband all the time without the kids as a buffer, first of all, this is when it helps to have been married to someone who you really enjoy spending time with, because now you're spending a lot of time with them. But it's also important to still maintain independent activities. You do not have to do everything together. You do not have to follow each other around. This is where the golf thing comes in. Michael's never gonna ask me to take up golf because that's his thing. That's his thing he can do for hours at a time without me. And it does not hurt my feelings, because when he's doing his golf thing, that means I'm alone for hours at a time and I can do whatever it is that I wanna do, even if it's just sitting on the couch and reading a book in the peace and quiet of my own home. That is something that I enjoy doing. But it's really important that the two of you have separate interests and separate hobbies. And at the same time, that there are things that you do enjoy doing together. And you should also embrace doing the mundane things together. Like, we love going grocery shopping together. Going to H-E-B and Walmart on a weekly basis, to us, it's like date time. It's fun. I get to hang out with my best friend all the time. You have to enjoy that you can do whatever you want. You wanna go out, let's pretend like the world is normal. You wanna go out and see a movie on a Tuesday night? Let's go. Let's go see it on a Wednesday afternoon in the middle of the day. Take advantage of this phase in your life, this empty nesting / retirement phase that it's been a long time coming. You've earned it, you deserve it, enjoy it. Don't look at it as a negative. Another question, I got a lot of variations on this, but it was how to deal with opposing political views, how to handle when you both disagree strongly on something, tips for handling the times you disagree but both feel strongly about individual opinions. So the political thing is a little bit of a hot button issue. It used to be it wasn't a big deal for a husband and wife to have opposing political views because the opposing political views weren't so oppositional. I remember Michael's parents, one was a Democrat, one was a Republican, and they used to good-naturedly kind of poke at each other around election time, and they would joke that their votes would cancel each other out. And nobody got heated, and nothing like what we see today, where it's, if you don't believe what I believe, then I hate you. I mean, that's basically where we are right now, which is ridiculous. Now, as far as how to handle the differing views, whether it's political, how you raise your kids, whose house you're going to for Christmas, it's been my experience, and I've asked a few friends as well. I don't know any husbands that really care that much about anything that's not related to finances or food. I mean, I'm generalizing in a big way, but it's, to me, is a very uncommon situation where at least my husband is so diametrically opposed to something I want or have an opinion on or cares that much. Like, I think, we jokingly say that the key to a good marriage is for a husband to learn to say, yes, dear. And I think that stereotype has existed because that kind of is the case. I find that most men, they're not wired the way women think. Like, we like to obsess over emotions and details, and yes, I'm generalizing, so please just leave your comments alone on that. But women in general look at things from a more emotional point of view. For instance, when Michael and I argue, and I've had this discussion with a few friends who are also married to trial attorneys as well. When we argue, I yell, I get upset, I get loud, I start doing a lot of this, and how could you think this way? And the more emotional and upset I get, the more level and calm he stays. It's a trial lawyer thing and it's a guy thing. And it makes me nuts. So those of you asking for how do we communicate in a healthy way or fight in a healthy way, I got nothing for you there. Because the reality is there's nothing that I have an opinion on that he cares that much. I shouldn't say that he cares if he feels differently than me. It doesn't matter. Now, that being said, these days, if you have opposing views on political issues, that's hard because they're like this. There's a few things going on here. First of all, especially with men, if they feel so strongly about something and are just not going to give in, there might be something else going on. Like there might be actually a different issue that they're upset about, but they don't know how to fight about that. So they're picking a separate issue. That's number one. Number two, I use this a lot when I'm giving advice to my kids. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Does it really matter on most things if you agree 100% on something? I mean, unless it's like bottom of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy, that unless you're disagreeing on food, shelter, monetary things, the rest of it, I mean, like, do you want to win the battle and lose the war? It's hard to fight it's hard to have an argument if you don't engage, if you choose to step back from the situation. And then also, Michael and I obviously disagree on a lot of things. We agree on more than we disagree on, but I've learned over time that if I love him and value him as a human being, I need to listen to when he actually feels strongly about something because I respect him and he probably has a good reason for feeling that way, and I should listen up and take that in. That being said, this flows into a related question. What do you do when you disagree about things with the kids? Again, it's more of a traditional gender role situation where when it came down to it, if we disagreed, which was rarely, he would concede to me in areas of child rearing because I spent the most time with the kids. My background is in education. I had the more informed choice or decision to make. In other things like finances or more business type related things, not that our home is a business, but more concrete issues like that or sports, I would defer to him because that's his knowledge base and his area of expertise. But both of us, after I would stop yelling, would take a breath and listen to each side and usually find a way to either meet in the middle or persuade the other person to agree. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but there's a lot of opinions in there. Okay, I got a couple of these faith-related questions. If faith is a central part of our marriage, if faith is important to share in a spouse, is faith been instrumental to a successful marriage? I have a really unique, well, not really, but a fairly unique point of view because I am Jewish. We only make up 2% of the American population, so my viewpoint is formed from a Jewish person's perspective. There are those that are more culturally Jewish and aren't particularly observant. I'm not a 100% observant Jew, but I am somewhat religious as well. But being Jewish is more than just a religion. It's an ethnicity, it's a culture, it is a faith. We have I don't speak it, but we have a couple languages that are unique to us. We have food. I mean, it's a whole thing. So being Jewish, being raised Jewish, also being raised in a very Jewish part of the country absolutely formed who I am and the way that I look at the world, my sense of humor, the food that I like to eat, all kinds of things. And Michael had that same experience. So it's hard for me to remove just the religious part and not include the ethnic and cultural part of being Jewish. We don't always agree and haven't always agreed on how religious or how we observe or even what synagogue we want to attend, but we've always seen the world from the same perspective, from a very decidedly Jewish perspective. Explaining what that is would take a whole video series. And again, I can't speak for every Jewish person in the world, but there are some commonalities. I don't think being of the same faith is essential to a good marriage, but being of the same faith certainly helps. Marriage is a hard enough journey when you are 100% in agreement and have the same views and the same opinions and the same backgrounds on everything. If you can minimize the differences, the big differences, then you'll have a better chance at success. And having the same faith background certainly helps. Would I say it's essential? No. I've seen plenty of unhappy marriages where they're both the same faith, so it's not a deal breaker. Okay, I did get a very specific question. She said, I am driven and motivated on everything. My husband is not. How do I handle, for example, work goals? So I don't know the whole situation. That's all the information I have. But my first question would be, has he always been this way? Was he always kind of laissez-faire and not particularly motivated when you first met him, when you were dating him, when you said yes to getting married? If the answer is yes, then my answer is you chose this man. You knew what you were marrying. You cannot be upset with him for being who he is. The second situation is this a recent change? Because if that's the case, then something's going on. People don't generally change their personalities like that. So instead of getting upset with him and frustrated, which is a natural response, and my initial response would be the same thing, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you doing? That would, be my initial response. Then maybe ask, wait, what are you doing? What's going on here? Why? Where's the change coming from? And that may involving a professional to help navigate the situation. I have found that people know there are personality flaws or personality issues in their future spouse. They know that those are issues when they're dating. They think it's going to get better or they think it's going to change over time. If you are dating someone right now and you're not married, but you're dating, and there's something about them or the way they choose to live their life that bothers you deeply, it is not going to change. Stop this relationship. It is not fair for someone to expect the other party in the relationship to change to fit what they want in a partner. There's plenty of other people out there. I have seen relationships where when they first started, when they were just dating, one or the other of the two knew there were issues with the other person. Issues that they had, not that the person had issues, just things about them they didn't like, and glossed it over and didn't think it was a big deal. But I'm going to tell you right now, it only gets worse. Any character flaw or personality trait that you don't like in your partner from the get-go only gets worse over the course of your adult life. Think about it like this. If someone annoys the crap out of you, or there's something about them that and you're just dating, and this is supposed to be the honeymoon phase. It's supposed to be when you have stars in your eyes and hear birds chirping whenever you kiss. If you have issues like that, then how are you going to react? How are you going to handle when you go through stresses in life? And you're gonna go through stresses, moving, new jobs, losing spouses, having children, all the stress that comes with raising those lovely little nuggets. It's not gonna get better. This is not the answer that this person is looking for in particular, but if you find yourself in this general situation and you're in the dating phase of a relationship and there are inherent personality traits about the person you are dating that you do not like, run. Another common question revolved around long distance relationships and how do you keep them going, alive, and healthy? It sort of depends. So I speak from experience. Michael and I met when we were both home for the summer after college in his first year of law school. We were together for a couple, 2-3 months, and then he went to law school in a different state. I stayed home to go to grad school in our hometown. And so the bulk of our relationship was actually long distance. We were together 3 years before we got married, and those 3 years, other than summers and holidays, were spent in different states. The long distance relationship survived because, one, we knew when we were going to see each other. We knew we had all summer together. We knew we had Thanksgiving, winter break, spring break. We knew we had those times to look forward to. We also knew it was a finite period of time. We knew that we had a common goal. We were both finishing graduate school, and then we were going to get married. So we knew it wasn't going to be like this forever. I think that it's very easy to maintain a long distance relationship like that. And in some ways, it's almost a better way to start a relationship or to build a relationship, because since you're not physically together most of the time, your relationship has to be built on something else, communication, because all you can do is talk. And nowadays, it's a hell of a lot easier than when we were dating, when we still had to pay for long distance phone calls. And the biggest source of stress for us, and probably for our parents, was the $300 and $400 phone bills we had every month. Now you've got free long distance and FaceTime and texting. Y'all have it easy now, you youngsters. Even though, like I said at the beginning, our initial relationship was started on physical attraction, it very quickly evolved into communication and an emotional connection because we weren't even in the same state, let alone the same room, most of the time. However, if you go on vacation and you meet someone on vacation, and then at the end of the vacation you decide you want to continue that relationship and you both live somewhere else and you're both, established in your cities and you have your job and whatever, and you don't know who's going to go where, at that point, that's tricky. And I don't know. I don't think a long distance relationship can work as well if you're still trying to build the relationship and don't have that common place to meet and still have that physical connection once in a while. And I'm not talking about sex. I mean, like, literally being together and spending time together, unless you know that that it's going to end soon. I think it's incredibly difficult to maintain a long distance relationship if you don't know if the relationship is actually going anywhere and you haven't decided to, at some point, made the decision to be in the same city. I'm not saying it can't work. I'm just saying it's a lot harder. One very specific question: why are most men not very romantic? Well, first of all, I disagree with the predicate of your question because you're assuming it's a very broad statement. You could flip that question around and go, why do most women demand to be treated like Disney princesses or live in a rom-com movie? I would say that you are not explaining to your partner what you want and what your expectations are, and perhaps your expectations are unreasonable. So why put the onus at the foot of the man in the relationship? You're a grown woman. You can communicate what you want. Got a few questions like how to argue. I'm in a 3-year relationship and we can get stuck, drag on arguments. First of all, if you're that young and you're arguing that much, it's not going to get better. You might want to think about why you're still with this person. Second of all, there can only be an argument if both parties decide to engage. So like I said earlier, if you don't want to argue, don't participate. But I think if you're constantly arguing, and I'm not talking about bickering, like Michael and I's love language is bickering. I'm talking about arguing. If you're arguing all the time, perhaps it's time to assess the relationship and decide if this is something you want to go forward. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but it's what you might need to hear. What do you do when you're really, really mad at him? Nag or keep quiet? I know I do get mad at him. I can't really think of anything that makes me mad right now, but obviously there are things I would say more that irritate me. Keeping quiet helps nobody. He won't even know I'm angry. He'd be oblivious, usually. So I wouldn't say nag, but let him know how you feel. And I need to say this because it seems like all my answers to these questions, we have just the perfect relationship and everything is done exactly the way textbooks and therapists prescribe. No, but when I'm not in the heat of the moment and I can sit back and calmly answer these questions, I can give the answers how I would like to behave all the time. It's not always how I actually behave all the time. Every relationship is going to have its stuff. The last set of questions that I'm going to sort of address are all asking about, like, how did you evolve your relationship into this? How did you change these things that you didn't like at the beginning into something that you like now, whether it was the way we communicate, the way that we fight, our physical relationship? And my answer to this is probably different than what you're going to hear from most people. If you've been with someone for 3 to 6 months and you are still trying to figure them out, now I know people are going to disagree with me here. My question to you is, what do you think is going to change? I shouldn't say 3 to 6 months. If you're with someone, say a full year, so you've seen them in every season of the year and gone through all the holidays, and you still can't figure out how you feel about this person or where you see this relationship going, assuming you're both adults and not like in high school or college where you should not be getting married until you're out of school and have full-time jobs and financially independent. Why are you with them? Like, if you don't gel on those basic things of communication and viewpoints and how you want to approach religion and how you want to deal with politics and how you handle your money and all those things, if you're already not in a position of agreement on all those things and you're hoping something's going to change or you don't know how you still feel about that, it's time to fish or cut bait. In this case, it's cut bait. Like, I've never understood why people are together like 7 years post-college and they can't figure out if this is the person for them. You should know. If you're still asking yourself if this person is the one, they're not the one. I want to end on this more positive note. First of all, I realize that if you're still here and haven't gotten completely turned off by my sort of know-it-all attitude and snark, I'm listening back to myself and realizing that probably came across that way, and I didn't mean it to be, but I'm just trying to like get as much out quickly, and sometimes, well, in this case, I think some sensitivity was lost. So I'm sorry. Secondly, though, if you're in a relationship and you're hearing all these things and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the end for me. No, not necessarily. Like I said, I'm talking in big generalizations because I'm talking to a lot of people at once. And so I can't tailor it to every individual situation. Just because you're in a situation that you don't like something about that person or the situation doesn't mean it can't change. But it does take effort, and it does take effort on your part to communicate what you want. And I think that's the key pretty much to every situation and every problem in every relationship, is coming down to clear expectations and communication about what you want, because you cannot change anything if you don't even know what's wrong. And at the end of the day, most of these questions, even things like, how do I get my husband to share more with me? How do we argue? How do you stay connected romantically? How do you maintain a close romantic relationship? All of those things are small, fleeting issues over the course of an entire lifetime together. So even when you're going through the rough patches, and every marriage has a rough patch, whether it's inside stressors or outside stressors, there's going to be moments. Know that this is just a blip in time, and this too shall pass. So while there will be rough patches due to either outside stressors or issues inside the relationship, if you work at it, if you both have the same end goal, if you remember why you were together in the first place, it is very, very possible to work through these things and overcome them. So do not feel discouraged. This is probably the longest video I will ever upload to YouTube. If I didn't answer your question and you still are really looking for my perspective on your issue, send me an email. I have my email address down in the description box, Marnie@MsGoldgirl.com. My answer is not the definitive answer to anything, but if you're just looking for completely neutral parties' input into a situation you're dealing with, I am more than happy to give you my insight if you're so interested. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope that you found this interesting. I hope you weren't offended or too off-put by my answers or the way that I answered them. Hopefully you're still around. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.